Why hypertrophy? Like, why do we need to gain muscle for rugby? What does it help us for? First and foremost, I mean, this is the Rugby Muscle Podcast. You guys should realise why we're training muscle by now, but it's worth stating because it is, we can't just blindly state this stuff and expect you. So we want to, go back ground zero. Why do we want it? Why is a bigger muscle better for rugby? Easily put, it helps with everything. So it's the base of the rugby physical preparation pyramid. There's a reason for that. But a bigger muscle just has the potential to be stronger, is usually going to be stronger, is going to be more powerful, stronger, more powerful gives you the potential to be faster, gives you the potential to execute your skills better and more efficiently because you've got bigger muscles, gives you the potential to be better in contact situations, gives you the potential to move better. Everything that you do in rugby can be supported better by having bigger muscles. That's not necessarily to say that just having bigger muscles makes everything better straight away, but it gives you the potential to do everything that much better. And obviously there's a limit to that. We'll get into that as well. But understand that a bigger muscle gives you the potential to do everything else better, right? A bigger muscle can produce more force, can be stronger, can do everything. Contact situations, movement control, every single thing that you do on a rugby pitch is better and more efficiently supported by a bigger muscle. Now, if that bigger muscle is untrained, that's a different point. But a bigger muscle helps you able to perform at your best. And, it's another straw man argument I throw you, but it is worth throwing out there. Look at the team here on the screen. For those listening, it's the Springboks before the 2019 World Cup, which, they won to become officially the best team in the world. They're all jacked. Like 1 to 15, every single player has a substantial amount of muscle, and there's a reason for that. There's a reason that if you look at professional rugby these days, you just don't see any. If there are, there's very few skinny guys. It just doesn't happen. And if there are skinny guys, for the most part, that you'll see a few lanky guys. But over the years of their playing career, you'll see them all put on a good bit of muscle. Like there's the odd beanpole that comes out, but then eventually packs on muscle. There's the odd skinny winger, but by the middle range or the end of his career, he's also bigger than the average guy. And that still means that he's put on substantial muscle from his original frame. Every single player is better served by putting on some quality muscle. And this is sometimes met with resistance from people that don't want to be too big, okay? First and foremost, let's squash that right away, okay? No one's ever been too big, okay? Gaining muscle is a very long, slow process to take. And to stop yourself from getting too big, you look in the mirror, you see that you're big enough, and you stop. I think that if we're listening to the Rugby Muscle Podcast, we're beyond that. We're beyond that frame of thought, but it does my head in. So many people say, I still hear it. People say, I don't want to be too big. I just want to tone. Who are these people that go to the gym for 2 weeks, go to bed one night, and then they wake up in the morning like, shit, I'm too big. And then they can't do anything about it. No, you just stop training and you lose that size again, right? It just doesn't happen, okay? So that's not a concern. Maybe there's a concern that you end up looking more like a bodybuilder and your muscle becomes non-functional, right? And to that I would say that, you look at Eddie Hall here, he's about as jacked as you can get. He's also the world's strongest man, or won the world's strongest man, which means his muscle is extremely functional. He was able to utilize it in several different ways to win the world's strongest man contest, which isn't just contract the muscle, lift the weight, be done. No, there's endurance events, there's different types of aerobic events. It's not just strongman. The sport isn't just about lifting, and he still won that competition. On top of that, I would argue that also obviously you would say Eddie Hall might not be the perfect rugby player, but he has the potential. If Eddie Hall, if you took this Eddie Hall guy here and he went to a professional team. He got a professional contract, and he went to go and play rugby, wherever it was, and he spent 2 years just learning how to prop. I could almost guarantee you he'd make it, because he has so much potential, because he has so much muscle, so much strength, so much athletic ability given to him from that extra muscle, from that extra strength. He would be able to do that, but he's out of practice. He has no practice. He's not a rugby player. His sport is a different sport. So remember that all of this is in the realm of rugby physical preparation. It's not, we're not talking about skills or tactics or other things that are going to definitely make you a better rugby player. So for the most part, that's, if you play against that guy that's muscle bound and he's a bad player, he's not necessarily a bad player because he's muscle bound. He's just a bad player that also happens to be muscle bound. Don't link the two together. Another concern that people say is, well, if I just get really big, and that dog ever shuts up. There you go. If I get too big, I'll end up out of shape. And you've seen those guys that have spent 3 months just doing gym work, and they come back to pre-season and they gas and they're really out of shape. Or you've got these people that have gone through a big bulking phase and they come back and you're like, oh yeah, I was too muscular. Not really. More often than not, this happens because this person puts on too much fat. We'll get into why that might be something that is beneficial to you, maybe in this episode, maybe in Hypertrophy 102. But understand that when you are inefficient at conditioning and you're not as good at in your sport of rugby, and you're out of condition, you're out of shape. It's not the muscle that's made you out of shape. It's the extra fat that you've put along with the fact that you haven't done any conditioning, and therefore you're also out of practice. Okay, there is something to be said for staying in relative shape whilst trying to gain muscle, and we'll definitely get into that in a later part of this episode. So hopefully that could make sense, right? It's not that you've put on too much muscle to become muscle bound. It's that you've put on fat, and that's made you out of shape, or you're just not in shape in the begin with. You're not training your rugby, you're not training the sport of rugby to become better at rugby. Moron dog won't shut up. Anyway, sometimes a real concern is, actually getting bigger can make me less effective, and I've seen it once. And that's happened with the late, great Jerry Collins, actual personal inspiration to me as a player. Rest in peace. What an absolute weapon on the field. But he actually once had the complaint that his biceps got too big, and they apparently impacted his big hits. Now, I think that there's something to be said for this, and there's something to be said along the same lines of Manu Tuolangi, who's so big that his joints and his body just keeps breaking down because he's so big. It becomes an issue. Now, with these concerns, I think the population that are concerned about them and have the concerns are the genetic elite. And if you're the genetic elite, you're probably not the person that's watching this video or listening to this podcast. For the most part, and if you are, you're trying to learn about gaining muscle in the right way. And if you do that efficiently, these aren't going to be concerns. But you look at Jerry Collins, whose impact was because, he maybe did a bit too much bicep work, and that maybe did negatively impact his hits. I don't know anyone else that's had biceps that have gotten too big. I don't think that's a relative concern. Also, this would come down to sort of how you would train, like whether you would do bicep curls to become a better rugby player is another question entirely. Bit beyond the scope of this video, but we will address it in a later one of the Rugby Muscle Applied series. But and then you look at when Manu Tuolangi is someone that gets injured a little bit too much, or you look at other muscle-bound guys, Sam Warburton, springs to mind. Like, these guys are the genetic elite, and they've got massive, and not through doing tons and tons of gym work, and they've reached the upper echelon of their absolute potential. It's just that the muscle that they carry somewhat naturally is a problem for them. So rather than train, they actually, for the most part, don't train to be bigger players. Manu Tuolangi barely ever trains to put on any size, if at all. He doesn't need to do that. His size comes to him naturally because of his genetics and because of, just because of his genetics. And so it's not a training issue. It's more an issue of, well, this guy's just too muscular, okay? And the forces he generates are just, there are causes for concern there. Now, if you're someone that just wants to put on muscle, I don't think this is a concern for you. I think that if you put it on slow enough, you'll be able to manage how you do it in an efficient manner, and it just isn't a concern. Okay, so if you are worried about getting too big and it actually being a problem, think again, right? Manu Tuolangi isn't massive because he trains to be massive. He's just massive. Now, there is a period of time where this is the last sort of concern when we talk about hypertrophy for rugby, is that in the moment of your training, when you're doing hypertrophy training itself, there is some disruption to the body that can potentially make you worse at the time. This is seen on a weekly level, which is demonstrated by this diagram here, which is the stimulus, fatigue, recovery, adaptation curve or model. And essentially what it shows is, you'll see this on a weekly basis, right? How you'll train, you'll hit a stimulus, that stimulus will fatigue you for a short period of time. Once you've hit that fatigue level and your body adapts and recovers, it comes back, and it eventually comes back to be stronger and more efficient and better, and therefore you then train again at that higher level, and you keep improving and keep improving and keep improving. This also happens on a month-to-month level when you're doing different training adaptations, when you're doing adaptations that aren't the ones that are different, okay? When you're looking at different methods of adaptation. So if you're doing a hypertrophy cycle, there is a good chance, if you're doing a hypertrophy cycle in the middle of a grueling rugby season, there's a good chance that during the weeks that you're doing that, your performance will drop down. That is not because your muscles are too big and it's causing you an issue. It's just because there's disruption going on. Your body's adapting to the load that you've put on it. It's trying to grow. At the same time, you're also trying to get it to do this other thing. So it's not just trying to grow, it's also trying to perform at rugby, which involves power, which involves stability and coordination, all these different other movements, which, because it's trying to grow at the same time, it just sends confusing signals, and it's just not as easy to be able to perform at your highest level. Now, if you were to remove yourself from that, or if you were to move rugby from that equation for the time being, whilst you're growing, that gives you the time to then grow efficiently, grow the muscles, and then once you work on the signaling afterwards, that gives you the ability to use those bigger muscles, which can then translate into more strength, more power, better rugby performance. It's kind of like if you were in a big, busy downtown area. I've stolen this analogy from My Kids Will Tell, but it works perfect, okay? So you're in a busy downtown area, and you're very limited in the amount of space that you have. So this is your muscle, okay? You've got your muscle. It's pretty much reached capacity. It's as strong as that muscle can be. So the only way to get it stronger, the only way to get more people or more business through that city is to tear down some buildings and build up some brand new, spanking, beautiful, big skyscrapers or whatever it is, okay? That involves a period of time where everything in that city will slow down, okay? You've got to do a controlled demolition, a controlled demolition of the buildings that you want to replace. You've got to put up a construction site. In that moment, particularly, like in the first few moments of that, when you're changing the signal, when you're deciding to build this, everything slows right the fuck down, because I've lived in London, the tube, when you plan to take a certain route on the tube and then you find out your station's closed, you've got to reroute. It gets a bit of a ball ache. Once you know which ones are closed, you can plan your route accordingly. And it gets a little bit better. It eases up. They start to divert the roads and divert the traffic efficiently. People start to avoid that area. It gets a little bit better, and you get a little bit more efficient whilst you're doing that. Eventually, after a period of time, those skyscrapers are then finished, and when they're finished, holy crap! Now we've got, not only are we back to the level that we were at before, performing efficiently and getting this business coming in, but now we're getting even more business because we've got these bigger skyscrapers. They've made everything else more efficient. We're able to send those signals. We're able to take more business in. We're able to be more efficient with everything that we do. We cannot be efficient or more efficient and expect more of us whilst we are in that moment of making the construction. And this gets lost on a lot of people who don't want to decline in the performance. This is the wrong... Hold on. Let me just pause this and upload the right presentation. Okay, so this is what a lot of people don't want to hear, really. If you are really wanting to, especially if you're an advanced athlete, if you really want to add some quality muscle, you need to take the time to focus on adding the quality muscle. It's no good doing a bunch of, you can't just say, oh, Monday to Tuesday I'm doing muscle gaining work, and then Thursday to Friday I'm doing power only work. It doesn't quite work like that. Maybe you can do lighter and heavier loads for the purposes of building muscle, and you'll gain strength a little bit easier in that range. I can get on board with that, but trying to work power, trying to really work the muscles before it's built, it just sends mixed signals. It doesn't work out for the best. It's just not a good idea. It's like polishing a car before you finish painting it. You finish the first job first, get the muscles to be bigger, then focus on whatever other movements. You're not going to. It's also like if we see this trend of building quote unquote functional muscle or functional bodybuilding. To me, that doesn't make sense. Like, if you want a bigger muscle, you want a bigger muscle. Worry about how that muscle performs once you've got it bigger. Getting a muscle bigger is hard fucking enough without trying to fuck around with all these other stupid movements. And I see this a lot with CrossFit. I bag on CrossFit a lot, but people that know what they're doing won't do it like this. If you're doing hypertrophy work, it's best off just to do hypertrophy work. Yes, you can slowly build strength whilst you're doing it, and you will be building strength, but you don't have to do sets of 1 to 2 or test your singles out or do explosive power work or maybe even I'm skeptical of how well you're going to perform at sprint work unless you're just doing low level technical stuff, or if you're just doing conditioning. Maybe then there's room for it, but I wouldn't worry about that. And this is probably beyond the scope for this video, but just understand that this is the only time when it's a concern when you're trying to gain muscle. It's not because you are getting worse because you're gaining muscle. It's because of the process of gaining muscle will slow down the other areas because of what we've already discussed. Okay.